This is the Google Doc project for Chapter 1 in Math 151. So we have two plots that we're going to create. Well, two sets of data we're going to use. We're going to create more than two plots. So they're fairly simple graphs. This is our table of data that we're going to input into Google Sheets. We're going to create a column plot, a line plot, a scatter plot. And we're going to put those on a separate worksheet inside the spreadsheet. We're going to put the appropriate labels and title. The next one is a pie plot using this information. So we have animals and how many animals were killed that particular year, and we want to show it as a pie plot. We also want to show it as a percentage instead of in terms of the actual number of animals, 1% of the total animals that are harvested. So we're going to create a column where we do some calculations as well. So all the different kinds of plots we talked about. Okay, let's go to Blackboard. So I will log back in. And so you can log into Blackboard. I skipped the login page. And then you go to Gmail. Within Gmail, you have this waffle, which shows the Google apps that are available. So we click on that, and you'll see down here the second row, Sheets. So we're going to do Google Sheets. Now, you probably won't have these things, but you will have the little plus sign. So that's to create a new spreadsheet, which is what we're going to do. And I'm going to just zoom in a little bit so you can see it better for the moment. Let's go ahead and title the spreadsheet. So we'll call this Google Docs project, and we'll say your name. Put a dash and put name, your name, not my name. Okay. Now once you do that, and you just click anywhere, it'll give it that name from now on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to enter the data. So you'll need to go look at the data in this document, and so we're going to do age savings in thousands. Okay, so that's the column headings: age savings in thousands of dollars. Now, one thing you can do, notice this verbiage is a little longer than the size of the cell. So if you take your cursor, put it between the B column and the C column where it's the two arrows, you can just drag it over and it will make the cell a little bit wider. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the ages. So we could just enter 30, 40, 50, 60, and that'd be fine. But I'm just going to show you something here. So we're going to add enter 30 and 40. And we're going to highlight both cells. So highlight both cells. You'll see this little box on the corner, lower right hand corner. You're going to wait till the cursor changes to the plus, and you're just going to drag it down. So that should be 50, 60, 70. So it automatically fills in the ages. Then we go back to the data. So it's 10, 30, 50, 90, 70. So it's 10, 30, 50, 90, 70. Let's double check that. 10, 30, 50, 90, 70. Okay. So that's pretty much it for the table. We could print this out if we wanted to, but we're not going to. I'm going to highlight these cells, including the titles, because it'll assume that the column 1 is the axes titles, and we won't have to enter them. It's going to assume the first column is the x-axis data and the second column is the y-axis data. So we're going to insert. I think I'm going to have to zoom out just a little bit so I can see chart show up. So insert chart. So it's inserted a chart, and it's made some assumptions. It's assumed that the title is just Y versus X. and it's taken the column headings and put those in as the titles for the axes. So that's actually what we want. So it's pretty good shape. The first thing we're going to do is, while we edit it, we're just going to move it a little bit to the left. So if you just click within here, not there, but if you click somewhere like up here, you should be able to then drag it over so that it's not covering up the data. We're going to move it to a separate sheet in just a second, but let's. Okay, so what are we going to do here? What did it ask us to do? Create a column plot showing the savings in thousands on the vertical axis, age in years on the horizontal axis. Okay, we've done it. We'll do these other plots in a second. Label the axes appropriately. Well, they actually did that automatically. Include a title. So we're going to show you how to change the titles. So in your editor, you have a data tab and a customize tab. And since everything's been chosen correctly, we really don't need to do anything at this particular point in the data tab. The customize tab, we're going to click on chart axis titles. And it's default here. The first thing is the chart title. So what we're going to do, instead of say savings in thousands versus age, we're going to say savings through a lifetime. Okay. And you can see as I change this, it updates over here. Now I could change that and make one thing is I could make it a little bit bigger, so I'm going to make it slightly bigger. Actually, that made it smaller, so I'm not sure what the default was. We'll say 8, make it 18. So you can change the size of the title. You should be able to also change the position, I would think, but I don't see that as an option right now. So maybe that isn't an option. It might just be on the left side. And if I wanted to change the horizontal axis title, age, so if I say age in years, it's pretty obvious it's years, but, and again, you can see it's been updated. Again, I can change the font, title font size. So let's make it a little bit bigger, 14. And I could do the same thing. I think the title is okay, vertical axis title, but I could change it to a little bit bigger. And really the only last thing I've got to do here is I want to get rid of the legend because there's only one bar. This is not that important information. So if I go to legend and just pick right here, it has position. The legend is to the right. You could move it around. You could put it at the top. You could put it inside. What I'm going to choose is none. I really don't need a legend for the data. So I'm pretty much finished with that. Let's see what else other options there are. You can change the font of the x-axis, so it would change the font of these numbers. So if you want to make those numbers a little bit bigger, let's see, then you could do that. Likewise, and you could go to the vertical axis. So go ahead and do the things I'm doing. Change that to a little bit bigger size so the numbers are easy to read. What other choices do we have? You can change the values. So instead of going from 0 to 100, which is the default, I could go from 0 to, say, 150 if I wanted to. Actually, the default was fine. So I'll just put 100 back in here. So you usually want to scale so that you can use advantage of the Y distance. So I try to make this maximum as large as possible. So this $60,000 or $90,000 in savings is close to 100. And then you can do grid lines down here. Let's minimize this vertical axis. So you click on that little arrow thing. Grid lines, if you wanted to have them closer together. So it says how many grid lines. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 grid lines, but if I wanted to have more detail, I could put 100 or put 10 in there. I could put 8 or 9. I think actually 9 is the one that would work out. Almost. Not quite. Okay, anyway, we'll go back to auto. So a lot of the stuff is done automatically. Okay, so we're done with that. So that's the first part. That's a bar. That's the column plot. Now to do the other plots, first what we're going to do is we're going to move this to a separate spreadsheet, separate worksheet. So this is a worksheet, and it's like different pieces of paper to different sheets. So what we'll do is we'll click on the graph. Notice this little 3-dot thing comes up, which means it's a pull-down menu. And we're going to move to Own Sheet. So now the graph is by itself, and the data is by itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to rename these tabs down here. So if you click on the little pull-down menu and rename it, we're going to call it Data for the savings, we'll say. So that's the savings data. And then we have savings chart 1, so we're going to rename that, and we'll say savings column chart. Okay, so that's our column chart. Now what we could do, because we have the same data, we just want to change the kind of column, kind of chart. I think we are able to copy this. So let's click on the corner here and say duplicate. So that'll duplicate. Now we have two. We have savings column chart and we have copy of savings column chart. This is going to become our next plot, which is the line plot. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the name. So we'll click on this corner, we'll go to rename, and we'll call it savings line chart. So it's not a line chart yet, but it will become one. Now, that's interesting. I guess if you click on the chart, it automatically pops up the chart editor. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to close it again. Or you could just go to edit chart and it does the same thing. So all we have to do is actually change the chart type. So instead of a column chart, let's go down to a line chart. And we're done. Let's go close that. So now we have a savings column chart, savings line chart. Still have the same axis, same title, same everything. Okay, we need one more, which is the scatter plot. So we'll go down to the bottom here and we'll duplicate. We'll rename it, which is going to be savings scatter chart. Let's click on the graph and we're going to change the chart style. Actually, let's go back to data and we're going to scroll down and click scatter. So in the case of a scatter plot, you just have dots. So you have a column chart, you have a line chart, and you have a scatter chart. And you're done. Normally you just use one kind of chart. We're just doing it here just to show the different kinds of charts. Okay, so that's part A. Part B is the animal thing. So we're going to have another data to do with animals. So we're going to add a sheet. So it's this little plus sign on the lower left-hand side. So what that does is it creates a new sheet. Let's go ahead and name it. So we'll click on the right thing there and we'll rename it as data animals. So we have the data for the savings, we have the data for the animals. And now we need to copy over the information. So we have animal, deer, turkey, bear, rabbit, squirrel. me zoom in a little bit. Animal, deer, turkey. I've already forgotten what it was. Deer, turkey, bear, rabbit, squirrel. Bear, rabbit, squirrel. Okay, and then we have the numbers. So what do we call that column? Harvest. And the numbers are 100, 100,000, 50,000, 1,000, I think, 10,000, 150,000, 165,000. Okay. So there's our table, and we could make a pie chart up just doing this. What we're going to do is have a column called the percent column. So to calculate the percentage, meaning what percent is 100 out of the total number of animals. So the first thing you need is the total. So there are things called equations or functions, and to do a function, you put an equal sign in. So right at the bottom of the column for harvest, we'll say equals. If you want to add all the values together, you take sum, left parenthesis, take your cursor, highlight the 5 cells, push the right parenthesis, enter. So if you add all these numbers together, you get 475,000. Next, to calculate the percentage, we put equal sign. Anytime you have an equation, you equal sign. The percentage will be this number, the number of deer, divided by the total number of animals. Now, I want you to push F4 at this point, and you'll notice that you get B2 / $B $7. What that means is when we copy this equation, that it's going to change the orange cell, the B2 will become B3 and B4, but the denominator B7 will stay B7, because for all of these percentage calculations, you have the same denominator, you just change the numerator. So that's all there is, equals B2 / $B $7. You could enter just dollar signs, but if you do F4 after you enter a cell, it'll then put the dollar signs in there automatically. So we push enter, and you see a decimal number. The column says percent. We'll fix that in a minute. Okay, now rather than writing the equation 4 more times, if you click on the cell, anytime you want to copy a cell, you just click on the cell and you just drag it down. And if I add all these numbers together, I'll get 1. There's a couple of things I want to change here. One is there's a lot of numbers. So if I highlight all the cells, and I go to format, there's 2 things I'm going to be able to do with format. One is to make it a percent. So I'm going to convert the decimal to a percent. And secondly is I'm going to be able to specify how many decimal points. So if you go format, number, percent, here it automatically goes to 2 decimal points. So that sounds pretty good. So you see these are all now percentages. And if I added, so if I go equals sum, left parenthesis, and I highlight this, and then put a right parenthesis, I should get 100%, which I do. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a pie plot, plotting this as the identifiers of the different parts and the percent. I don't want to plot the number, I just want to do percent, so we're going to have to do something a little trickier here. So it's going to initially do something that I probably don't want it to do, and then we'll fix it. Okay. So if we just go to insert chart, it's going to insert well, it figured it out, it was a pie chart. Interestingly enough, it actually automatically did the percent. So it's a smart little thing. So you can see what it's done is it's decided it's a pie chart. probably because it's percent. That's probably how I figured it out. The data, it says that the first column and the third column, not the second column, are what I'm going to plot. So everything looks good there. The only thing we really need is a title. So we'll go to Customize, we'll go to Chart and Axis Title, Chart Title. Right there it's percent. We'll say Animal Harvest. Put a year on it. I made this up so it doesn't really matter. And you can see how the chart is changing. Okay, so we're done, I think. If not, we can go back and change it later. So we'll close the editor. Now notice it's covering the data again. So if we click on the chart, go to the menu, move to its own sheet, you'll see now we have a separate sheet. The title is Chart 2, so we want to change that. So click on the menu button here, rename it to Harvest Pie Chart, and there we're done. So that's exactly what I need. You can see there that the is there anything here that doesn't look good? Interesting. So it isn't actually exactly right because it's actually including one additional column that I don't want. So let's go back and edit the chart. And if we go back to the data, oh, we can't do that. Oh yeah, here. We really only want to go through column or row 6, and I went to row 7, or it automatically decided to go to row 7. So what we'll do is we'll go here, edit the chart, and change this number to 7 instead of 8. So I'm just manually going in there. And what that should do is it should redo the plot. So let's see what happens. Okay, hadn't done that yet. Let's try it again. So that's right. What did we say it went through? 6. Okay. I must have not changed it exactly right. So I'll say okay. Okay, so there we go. So I corrected the columns that were involved, or the rows that were involved. So now you can see you've got squirrel 34%, deer 21%, turkey 10%, bear 2%, rabbit 31%. Let's just double check those. Yeah, so it matches our data. So what I did, just to remind you, is I just went in here and manually changed these to match the extent of where the data was entered. Okay, so that's it for the project. You can use these arrows to move horizontally in the left direction. So if, I've got my data, savings data, I've got my column chart, I've got my line chart, my scatter chart. Let's go to the right. I've got my data for the animals. I've got my harvest pie chart. Now the last thing you want to do is send me this. Last thing you're going to do is send me this. So go to File. Let me zoom out a little bit. So what you want to do is email as an attachment. I want you to send it to me not as a PDF file, but as a Microsoft Excel file. You'll enter my name in here. And the subject is the title of the spreadsheet. So you should have your name in here, so everything should be fine. You don't need to send me a message if you don't want to. So Excel, my address, this should be fine based on the name of the file. Then you send it to me. And then what I get is an email with the information. So let's just, well, I'm not going to open up my email just in case it's some email from somebody. And then you just close it.